Hey folks, Serdar here with Dev with Serdar. If you've been programming for some time, you ought to know by now how powerful regular expressions can be for finding patterns in text. But there are many cases where you don't want to use regular expressions, even though they seem superficially like they might be the right tool. So in this video, I'm going to talk about a few common signs that what you're doing isn't a job for regular expressions, or at the very least, they're not for regex alone. The first is when you're trying to match something that has just too much complexity and corner cases. And by this, I mean that you've crafted some regular expression that captures a pattern, but you're spending a lot of time and effort trying to capture exceptions to the rule rather than the rule itself. That's a big hint you're barking up the wrong tree. So in a case like this, you want to stop, back up, and look at the problem that you're working on at a much higher level. Maybe what you just need to do is capture the largest and most general pattern first with one relatively generic regular expression, and then use capture groups from that expression to subdivide the problem, to take each of those capture groups and work on them separately, perhaps even with their own regex. You're not going to win any points by cramming everything you're looking for into a single regex. A second case is when you're trying to parse something for which existing libraries will do a far better job. Here's a couple of examples I've seen of this in the wild. One is people using regex to validate email addresses or parse datetime values. Both of these things are solved problems. You don't need regex for them. You're far better off reaching for existing tooling to solve those things. If you have a datetime as part of a regex capture, then just slice that out and pass it along to a component whose job it is to make sense of datetime values. Don't reinvent wheels. And to bring up an old joke that has made the rounds plenty of times in developer circles, absolutely don't use regex to parse HTML or XML, except maybe in the sense that you're getting a property from a tag, but even then. And more on that in a moment. The third case is when you're trying to parse human language. And the most common example of this is when you try to use regex to construct an obscenity filter. Many people who write software for communities want to include some mechanism for filtering unprofessional or non-work-safe language. And as you can imagine, they reach for a regex as an easy way to do that. Well, the bad news is that written and spoken human language are so contextually complex, there's no way you can consistently reduce such a thing to being captured properly by a regex. What you can do, if you insist on having something in this vein, is match against unwanted words and then alert a human for review to look at the context. You never fully automate blocking stuff like this. A fourth case, and probably the most important, is when you're trying to parse what amounts to a domain-specific language, or DSL. So what is a domain-specific language? Well, one perfect example of this would be the regex syntax itself. And, as I mentioned, our old friends HTML and XML are other good examples. So you'll probably ask, what if the data that I'm dealing with amounts to a DSL and there isn't really a library for it? Well, that's when you want to reach for the next big tool up the ladder from regular expressions, a parser generator. A parser generator lets you specify a grammar or a tree of patterns for whatever it is you're trying to make sense of. This is a far better way to accommodate a complex data structure, although you will need to put in more work to write a parser than to craft a set of regular expressions. The good news is that most every language out there has a library for writing parsers, sometimes several of them. In Python, there's the Lark library, which comes with a bunch of handy examples like parsing Python itself. In Java, there's Antler, which has a long and venerable history. In Rust, there's crates like Nom and Pest. So to sum up, when you're working with regular expressions, be wary of cases where you're trying to capture more exceptions than you are the rule itself. Don't try to parse things that already have libraries for parsing them. Don't try to interpret human language with regex, especially not with things like obscenity filters. And if you're parsing something complex enough to be its own language, just pick up a parsing library and use that instead. So that's it for this episode. If you liked it, leave a comment below. And don't forget to follow Dev with Serdar and InfoWorld on Facebook, YouTube, and Infoworld.com.